Shalom Aleichem, Mishnah is continuing in the second parak of Challah. Today we learn Zayin and Ches. So here we are at Mishnah 7. Now yesterday, Mishnah 6, we talked about the shiur, the size, the minimum size of a dough to be obligated in the mitzvah of separating Challah, and that was 5/4, 1.25 kav. Now Mishnah Zayin reads shiur hachollah, meaning the shear of the challah itself, the piece removed from the dough, echad me'esrim ve'arba. It's 1 out of 24. The Bartner here explains, based on Chazal, that less than this is not called a nitina or a matana, and therefore wouldn't be good enough because the Torah says titnu. You're commanded to give it to the Kohanim, so it has to be enough to be a significant gift, not just a little bit. Now, in current practice, we do take just a little itty bit because it's going to be burned anyway as challah tamei, because ourselves and the Kohanim are tameim, so it wouldn't serve much of a purpose to give him something tamei that he cannot eat. So since we're burning it anyway, we just do separate a tiny bit. But coming up soon, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to have a Beit HaMikdash this year, and we're going to be holding by Tuma and Tahara, and we'll be making our Challah in Tahara, and we'll be giving the minimum shear 1 out of 24. Now the Mishnah continues, Ose Isa La'atzmo, Ose the Mishnah Beno, Echad Me'esrim Ve'arba. It says if you're making the dough just for yourself, like for your own family, or you're making it for the Mishta Beno, is the simcha, the feast of your son, like a wedding feast, a bar mitzvah, something where you're inviting a lot of people. Since it's still a dough for private use, the shear is still 1 out of 24. However, nachtom, a baker, a professional in the business of baking, shehu ose limkor b'shok, he's making it to sell in the market. V'chena isha, or even a woman in her own kitchen, she ose limkor b'shok, but she's making commercial sizes of dough that she wants to sell in the market. Echad me'arbaim ushmona, it's 1 out of 48. Now the reason here, Bartner explains, is if you're making a larger amount, a commercial amount to sell, then typically there's a lot more dough to start with. So even if you give the Kohen 1 out of 48, it's still a significant matana. It still satisfies the requirements of titnu. So even if they're actually selling a small amount, since normally what's sold is prepared in a large amount, it's still a significant gift, and it could be 1 out of 48 instead of 1 out of 24. The Mishnah explains, nitmeit isota, if the dough nebuch got contaminated, it got tamei, as I just mentioned, we're all tamei today. Shogeget o anusa, and this was an accident, or it was, by force, the sherets fell onto the dough and died. Echad me'arbaim ushmane. So you only have to separate 1 out of 48 because it's tamei anyway. Nitmeit mezida, if he got contaminated on purpose, echad me'esrim arba kadei shalo yehei chote niskar. So if he contaminated it on purpose, which is really not supposed to be done, then they would still have to take 1 out of 24th for the challah, so they're not gaining by contaminating the dough of having to give less to the Kohen. Mishnah Ches, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, nitelet min tahor ala tamei. He says you could take challah from something tahor, not contaminated, onto a tamei dough to exempt a tamei dough from the requirement. Ketzad, how do you do it? Because the issue here is you need minamukaf. You need them close together and even touching, but you can't touch your tahor to your tamei because then you make your tahor tamei, and that defeats the purpose. So ketzad, so what does Rabbi Eliezer say we should do? Isa tahor, isa tameya, you take the pure dough and the impure dough, notel kedei challah, meisa shalohor machalata. You're taking enough challah for both of them, and you take it from the dough that has not yet had challah separated, because if you're taking it from a tahor dough that already had challah separated, well, then you can't turn around and use it as challah for something else. So it's both of them need hafrashas challah. V'noten pachot mikabetza be'emtza, and you make like a little bridge out of dough, but the dough has to be a small size, less than a betza. Kadei sheyitzel min amukaf. So now you're taking challah from something that's joined. You're putting the challah in the middle, and next to this bridge of a small bridge, less than a Beitza bridge, that will connect them in a sense. So the tahor dough is touching this little bridge, which is then touching the tamei dough. So how does that help? Because this little bridge is less than a beitza, so even though when it touches the tamei dough, it receives tuma, it receives ritual impurity, but since it's less than a beitza, it cannot transfer impurity to other food. So even if it gets tamei from the tamei dough, it doesn't give that tuma to the tahor dough. So this is Rabbi Elazar's solution for minamukaf for putting them together. Now, you might ask, a couple days ago, we learned in Mishnah Dala that Rabbi Elazar would say even if you put them in a basket together, it might be good enough for minamukaf. I don't yet have a good answer, but it could be that, that was b'diavad after you cooked them in the oven and you're putting all the baked breads together in a basket. That would be good enough for minamukaf if you still need to separate challah. And here, lechatchila, we're separating it from the dough. And how do you get the doughs to be touching and be together? Well, you got to use this bridge so you don't transfer the tuma. The Mishnah concludes, Chachamim osim. The Chachamim say, no, you should not separate from tahor on the tamei. We're worried that in the process, something's going to touch something directly, someone's going to get tuma, and you're going to end up being metame the tahor dough. So don't try this at home, kids. Have a great day.